bias, exposing the propaganda, and challenging you to use your brain. It's time to tap into the truth.
Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed time to tap into the truth. Coming to you live from historic Roane County, Tennessee, this is your host, Tim Tapp. Today, we're talking about some stories that have actually been in the news for a while. They've been kind of hush-hushed by a lot of the mainstream media, but now they're starting to get a little more attention, especially among some of the more liberal sites at the moment, because there are lawsuits involved, and there's more than just civil liberties involved that's been going on here, but it's only going to be the civil liberties that get pushed to this point, and probably some hints of racism. First of all, the two main stories that we'll be discussing a little bit later evolve around things that took place in Texas, which of course is a favorite liberal target right now because there is a major push by the so-called progressives really trying to turn Texas from a red state to a blue state. They want to get that large voting block, and they want to convince everybody that they should be voting Democratic there so that we can give up some more of those civil liberties. But in truth, the real primary concern here should be the fact that, at least in certain circles, in certain places, the police are losing sight of what their role and what their responsibility is. They're overstepping their bounds, and they are pushing forward, trying to draw more power over the individual citizens than what they actually have. Now, at a later point in time, over on the blog talk version of Tap Into the Truth, we will probably have a full-blown show involving the constitutional restrictions and the how, the whys, the wherefore on why these issues are such a significant part of what we should be keeping an eye on right now. But the truth of the matter is, these stories are significant, they are noteworthy, and other than a few outlets such as Alex Jones, perhaps to a lesser extent Glenn Beck, not a lot of folks have been talking about these particular two cases. Expect to hear a lot about them in the next little bit. But before we get into talking about what, by my estimation, equals molestation on the side of the road, let's hit a couple of headlines for the day. First of all, a plane coming from Ireland had a bomb threat called on it. Still not a whole lot of details going on if you haven't heard about it. Hopefully there will be more details forthcoming soon. It was forced to land in Philadelphia International Airport. Just something to keep an eye on. Don't know if it's really related whatsoever to the known and credible terrorist threat that we're supposed to be under lockdown for the next couple of weeks, evidently. There's more discussion still continuing about the closing of the embassies and whether or not it's the right message to send. You know my feelings on it if you checked out my broadcast from a couple of days ago. And for the record, in case you're wondering or come across this in podcast version, today's date is August the 7th, 2013. So a couple of days ago, being August the 5th, of course, had a broadcast where basically I was on an angry rant for the whole time because I was extremely miffed. We will not be finished with this topic, not by a long shot. We will be talking about this for some time to come. But there is no question that the idea of closing these embassies down, there has got to be more to it than what's been allowed out into the public domain, but I still have serious questions as to whether or not this is legitimate at all. It seems to be more like an opportunity to, again, pull the old switcheroo, let me distract you, don't look over here at what we are doing, and oh, by the way, beg us to keep spying on you. This is what we have the NSA for. In the meanwhile, also in the news, we broadcasted yesterday's show here at Spreaker talking about the Fort Hood shooters trial beginning. Well, it abruptly has been, postponed, I guess is the best word. The judge did not particularly care for what one of the attorneys on standby, the alleged Fort Hood shooter, has brought forth information stating that evidently he just wants to die. And the judge at that point became concerned that that may very well be the case. So they have brought an end to the trial, not permanently, but to give an opportunity for everyone to reevaluate what is actually going on. I mean, what we really have happened is Nadal Hassan has stated point blank he did it. He wants to become a martyr in the name of Islam. There's no question and no doubt that is his intention. But as it turns out, since he is defending himself, he does have attorneys on standby. In this particular case, the standby attorney for Nadal Hassan basically told the military judge that he appears to be intent on receiving the death sentence. No big surprise there. Lieutenant Colonel Chris Poppy, that is Hassan's standby attorney, said that if Hassan continues to work towards being executed, Poppy does not want to have any more level of responsibility. In fact, he asked that his responsibilities be minimized. Now, the thing is, with Hassan defending himself, he has Poppy there to step in the event that Hassan needs anything. So in essence, he is Hassan's attorney, but he's not actually working the case in court based on Hassan's wishes. Now, to me, that seems a bit odd. But at any rate, Hassan told the judge that he objected to the statement and that he considers this to be a twist of the facts. However, the judge, Colonel Tara Osborne, cleared the courtroom and recessed for the day. Now, the trial will resume tomorrow, Thursday. Hassan is representing himself, like I said, but he does have attorneys on standby if needed. This evidently is a common practice for those who can either afford it or who are in the unique situation to have these people appointed to them. But if you remember back on Monday, in an opening statement, he told the court that the evidence presented during the trial would clearly show he was the shooter. He's not denying it. He's looking to become a martyr. He committed a cowardly act. He attacked unarmed people. Yes, these are members of the military, but they are in a gun-free zone on the base. They were unarmed. The only worthwhile positive thing out of it is the former major did basically order a civilian worker out of the area before he went on his rampage. So he recognized the difference between civilians and military personnel. He didn't seem to recognize the fact, though, that none of these people there had done anything, even to his Muslim brothers. Some of them were waiting for deployment, but he seems to be proceeding from this false notion that we're at war with Islam. The United States is not at war with Islam. Unfortunately for our government, they don't seem to recognize the fact that radical Islam is at war, not only with us, but with everyone that is not Muslim. Do all Muslims believe that? No, obviously not. Do we have a realistic way of telling, however? Not so much. The very teachings of the Quran and the Hadith, all good Muslims have to pretend and lie and do things in order to protect Islam, protect the faith, deceive the infidels. I'm not going to get diverged down this path for today, though. It's important for us to recognize and understand who our enemies are and what the source of this is. Ignorance in this matter will get more innocent people killed needlessly. And all this former Army psychiatrist is going to end up doing is continue to stir up a large amount of anti-Islamic feeling here in the United States. That's all he's going to do. So whatever else he's hoping to accomplish, it's a wasted of effort. Does he want to be a hero in one of these predominantly radical Islamic places? Evidently he does. Excuse me. Dang, that kind of sneak up on me there. Does he think he's going to be martyred if he receives the death penalty? Obviously, that's what he seems to think. But despite appearances, much as what I've said in covering the Trayvon Martin story, I really don't know what's going on inside this man's head. The fact that he was a psychiatrist says enough that he's probably fairly messed up anyway. I mean, it just... Hear me out here, folks. In most states, it is required by law that psychiatrists and therapists of almost any kind that deal with mental health of their clientele have to see a psychiatrist or a caregiver in the same field so that they can get all that additional crap off their chest. You know, when you sit back and you listen to people's problems all the time, it's going to affect you. Period. In the meanwhile, we'll see, as we continue to follow this trial, what happens next. Does this man deserve the death penalty? Probably. But since that seems to be what he wants, I think it might be a more fitting punishment if he had to spend the rest of his life in a military prison. Now, would he actually live long? Not if he's left in Gen Pop, but I don't think he would get to be in Gen Pop anyway, just because of his disabilities as a result of having been shot. Military justice is a little different than the civilian adjudication system, so I don't know right offhand what the ramifications of his actions may end up being. But here's what I do know. He fired upon unknowing people who had no reason to believe that they were in any danger, who had no means of defending themselves immediately as they were in the no-gun zone on the military base. That's something we really have to wrap our minds around, because I think most people who are civilians and who have never served, who haven't spent time around others who served, don't realize that for the biggest part on most military bases, there are places where the personnel are not supposed to be carrying around weapons. Why? Well, most of the people on these bases are trained killers of some kind or another. Now, that might make them a bit more dangerous when it comes to trying and disciplining some more of the hot-headed members. So there are rules put in place. Now, it's fair enough to say that some of these people are trained to kill by means of utilizing advanced technology. So it's not like they're all hand-to-hand combat experts. Don't get me wrong. But in the end, there are sound reasons why there are large parts of our military bases where the majority of the personnel are not exactly going around strapped. That being said, and I promise I'm going to move off of that topic now. It's something that holds my interest dearly, and I know a lot of folks are keeping a close eye on this. But we are going to move on to today's main topic, which is these body cavity searches. There's two particular cases that I'm going to give you information about that you're probably going to hear quite a bit about in the next little bit if you haven't already heard about them. Like I said, I heard about this several months ago initially, and it's coming back into the news now because lawsuits are being filed, settlements are being made. But there are reasons why we should be more concerned about this than just ignoring things off the top. Now, by the way, if you would like to see the dash cam video involving these searches, which the actual body searches occurred off camera on one of them. I have not watched the entire video on the other one. So if you're just looking to try and get the little pervy look, don't waste your time. But the videos are posted on tapintothetruth.com. If you'd like to go there and check it out, it's on the home page, along with a few other videos that you may find worth your time. Hope that you will take the time to go there, check them out, enjoy them. But here's the deal. As it is being reported now in the more liberal media, you have a case of 2 roadside stops by Texas police that turned into humiliating episodes for 4 women after the cops conducted cavity searches on the victims while they stood on the side of the road. Both cases happened in 2012, but they're getting more attention now since one set of victims came forward last month. Attorneys and civil rights experts suspect the cases aren't isolated and show that someone, somewhere in the state of Texas, is training police to think this is okay behavior. Both incidents were caught on video from the officers' dash cameras. Now, pay close attention to how this is being reported. Remember, this is a report coming from the more liberal media. All right, but they're on to something here. Number 1, attorneys and civil rights experts suspect the cases aren't isolated. Well, I can pretty much guarantee you that they're not isolated. Here's the problem. Most police officers are good and decent people that are out there doing the best job that they can do. They have a very hard job, and unfortunately, sometimes if they do it for very long, they're forced to become very cynical very quickly because most citizens are trying to game the system too. They don't know who to trust. They feel like they can't take anybody at face value. They can't just take their word, and they have to assume each and every one of us is a threat to their well-being because there are just enough of us that if they don't do that with all of us, they're going to end up dead. That's the reality that these men face every time they go out trying to do their job. Do some of them overstep their bounds as a result of this mentality they're forced into adopting? Yes. Others overstep their bounds simply because they have the personality flaw. There are several police officers out there today. I've been fortunate enough not to have to deal with any of them personally, but I have seen and heard a lot of questionable activity going on, being perpetrated with other people. Folks, that the people writing this report would also consider victims, not suspects, not perps, not the accused, but victims. And in truth, in this particular case, they were victims. I will give them that. They're right with this to this point. Now, as we continue reporting here, a Dallas attorney, Peter Shuttle, a former Texas police officer, told the New York Daily News that when he saw one of these videos that he was shocked. He said that I was a law enforcement officer for 16 years and I've never seen anything like it. Okay, so in the first case that we're going to be talking about, it involved two ladies by the name of Ashley and Angel Dobbs, an aunt and niece pair who were pulled over when an officer saw them throw cigarette butts out onto the street. Now, according to their lawsuits, the women denied throwing cigarettes out the window, but they went along with the officer's demands. You can see that on the video. She doesn't want to be argumentative. She states that she didn't remember throwing anything out the window. That's clearly in the video. If you want to take the time to go over to tapintothetruth.com and check it out. After the officer failed to find any drugs, don't know where you make the leap from cigarettes to drugs automatically, but, maybe some law enforcement officers out there, that may be the training these days. At any rate, after he failed to find any drugs, he called for a woman officer to come on scene and search the women. The female officer, a Kelly Hellison, arrived and started searching the women. She reached into the women's pants from the front and from the back. Important note here, she did not change gloves in between. There's a chance for infection. Both women say that the officer reached her fingers inside of their anuses and their vaginal areas. If you feel like you're in the X-rated hour, there's a reason for that. At that point, this has become assault. The two women were let go with a warning for littering after the officers found nothing incriminating. Now, Hellison has since been fired, and the women won a $185,000 settlement for the incident, according to local TV station and NBC affiliate DFW. In the second case, which happened in July, it came into the court system in July. It involves Brandy Hamilton and Alexandria Randall. These two women were headed home from the beach on Memorial Day weekend in 2012. They were pulled over by an officer for speeding. Hamilton was driving, wearing just a bikini. She asked if she could pull on a dress to cover up, but the officer said no. After a lengthy stop, he called for the female officer to search the women. Again, only one glove was used, and she reached into the women's private areas, sticking her fingers inside. There is a pending possession of marijuana charge against one of the women currently, but they're claiming not guilty to that. Now, the female officer in this case, a Jenny Burra, I believe it's B-U-I. Jenny Bowie. I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Jenny, so please forgive me. Anyway, again, she got fired. And and the male officer, Nathaniel Turner, has been suspended. That, according to the reports from their local TV station, KHOU. Hamilton and Randall say they're suing because they want to raise awareness that these kind of things are happening to women in Texas. Even the folks over at Think Progress, one of the most so-called progressive think tanks / media outlets, they point out that these searches likely violated the women's constitutional rights. Now, to be completely fair, police do have a wide latitude to search vehicles. Almost nowhere, unless it's done so on a very local basis, is there any level of real privacy that extends into your cars or SUVs, trucks, whatever you're driving, the same way that it does when it comes to your house. You know, they don't have to get a search warrant to search a car. And probable cause has become such a loosely defined issue these days, very difficult to do. Now, searching the car is one thing. Searching you still requires probable cause. Seems like in both these cases it's a stretch. Again, I invite you to go over to tapintothetruth.com, watch both of these videos, and kind of decide for yourself whether or not there was actual probable cause here. At any rate, because the law doesn't give the same privacy rights to cars as it does your house, there most likely was a constitutional violation. Now, this coming from the so-called progressive. In the past, liberals, real liberals, true liberals, were all about strict constitutional protection of your civil liberties, your civil rights. Here, they're only hinting that it was likely. There's no question that their civil rights were violated here. One of the people speaking for Think Progress actually went so far as to say that it is doubtful that Texas police had any reason to specifically believe that the women searched in these videos were carrying marijuana in their vaginas or rectums. Well, yeah. You watch this, and it's obvious what was going on. What happened here is you had police officers that were bound and determined to justify you haven't been pulled over. I will tell you about an experience I had one time. Now, by no means does it come close to what these women had to go through, but it's just an example of the mentality and the thought process that we're talking about here. I was driving through a small town, one I was very familiar with. I drove through quite a bit and still do, so I'm going to try to be as vague as possible about it. But I was driving through a small town as an older teen with my Camaro. And what happened is this Trans Am, which was a few years older than my Camaro, drove by. It had a headlight out. Well, shortly after I seen it go by, local police officer pulls me over. Then is insisting that I had a headlight out, asked me to turn it on for him. So I turn on my headlights, which, you know, it was just getting dusk, and I actually don't think I'd even had mine turned on yet. Probably should have by then, but at any rate, I turn on the headlights. Well, they're both working. Surprise. And then he's like, well, it must be when you're on high beams. Go ahead and hit the high beams for me. So I hit the high beams. Again, no problem. Well, rather than to admit that there was an issue or a problem or that he might have made a mistake, he then insists, well, you must have a loose wire. You better get that checked out. And don't let me see you drive through here again with this headlight out. And then he lets me go. And that's my warning. But there was nothing wrong with my headlight. I knew instantly after pulling away, it occurred to me, that guy mistook my Camaro for the Trans Am, which was a similar but not identical color. That particular year models involved, the body styles were close enough that at a glance, someone who doesn't know cars might very well think that that's exactly what was going on. But the guy made a mistake. Mistakes happen. But the point is, the mentality in question here, he was not willing to let on that there was anything that he's done that was wrong. So rather than back up, they would rather escalate. Now we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about really what we need to be concerned about when it comes to this case. If you haven't already figured it out, there's a ton of things that all citizens should be worried about. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Tap into the truth. Check us out at tapintothetruth.com for our latest blog posts and for links to all of our past broadcasts. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and to follow us on Twitter. That's Tap Into the Truth right here on Spreaker Radio. Yes, that's right. Check us out on tapintothetruth.com. Like I've already mentioned more than a couple of times at this point, I do have both of those videos in question, the dash cam videos from the Texas Highway Patrol officers involved in these cases. They're both up there on the homepage right off the bat, along with several other videos. Please go ahead and like us on Facebook. Feel free to follow us on Twitter. While you're at it, go ahead and hit the follow button here. Appreciate new followers all the time and still trying to get those numbers up for opportunities that exist here at Spreaker to expand all the broadcasting. Also, just as a quick reminder, we are still running a promotional contest for new followers. So you've got the opportunity to be in a drawing for a prize pack. In the event that you are chosen, you'll be notified and we will send you that prize pack promptly. I guarantee. Something that will also help increase your possibilities of winning is to go ahead and follow the show at Blog Talk as well. If you will just send us a message from the Tap Into the Truth website, that also gives you an extra chance in the drawing. Any likes at the Facebook page, any new follows at Twitter, any retweets, and any comments or shares from the Facebook page, those things also get you additional opportunities to win. Now, here's the deal. This topic has been largely ignored for over a year now by the mainstream media in both cases. The reason you're going to hear more about it now is because now there is still this major push to make this divide racially. So the pair that was involved that were wearing just a bikini, the driver, coming back from the beach, they were a couple of black ladies. So this can be construed as a racial thing. Now, it's not the case with the other two, which have reached a settlement. The fact that there is a pending charge against one of the two ladies in the later case involving marijuana possession, that gives some credence to maybe why the officers felt that a search may have been warranted. But here's the thing. In every state of the Union, whether you realize this or not, driving is not a right. Your ability to pilot and operate a motorized vehicle over the streets and highways is not a right. The states consider that to be a privilege. As such, they can require you to have a license. Yeah, that's why you're supposed to have one. In the process, they also can set up some of the most ridiculous rules, guidelines, and whatever type of restrictions and any kind of hoops they want to try to make you jump through in order to qualify for your license or in order to maintain your privilege of driving across the streets and highways. Now, if your car is sitting firmly on your property, and you really needs to be your property, then you have a reasonable right to no search and seizures of your vehicle. If it's your vehicle and it's on your property and you're not driving it around anywhere where you're leaving your property, that's one thing. But once you're on the road, you have to follow whatever ridiculous rules and restrictions that get put on you, which also includes these checkpoints, these drunk driver checkpoints, and these other things. I've heard people make arguments that these are unconstitutional. And the truth of the matter is that if you had the same rights and privileges within your vehicle as you do within your home, then it would be true. But unfortunately, it's just not. Now, I don't necessarily agree that it should be that way. And if you don't agree with that either, then we have something in common. But until the laws are changed, that's still going to be the case. You'll walk into any court anywhere inside the United States or her territories, and if you have been seized anything out of your vehicle while you were out driving around on the road, it's going to stick. And it's going to stick because they have a right. As the article that we were talking about earlier said, they have a wide latitude. Again, because you don't have a reasonable right of privacy within your vehicle when you're operating it on a public street. Is that fair? Is that right? That's an argument for another day. If you think it is, fine. If you think it isn't, I agree with you. I don't think that it is. I think there still should be certain things set aside. But that being said, it still doesn't change the fact that you have the right to not be molested on the side of the road. There are still a list of do's and don'ts that the police must follow. They are still supposed to show you a reasonable amount of respect. You still have your civil right to not be unreasonably searched there. You have the right to turn down a breathalyzer test. So then you have the right not to have your person violated on suspicion, which may or may not even be legitimate. We have concerns when you sit around and look around. We have the tinfoil hat crowd, which, I say it in an enduring fashion because I feel like I'm part of that crowd a good deal of the time these days, because so much of what they've been saying for the last 20 and 30 years I see easily verifiable now. And this is another great example. I trust the police, but then the police around here, my experiences with them have almost all been positive, at least in the last couple of decades. And I have faith that most of them are simply trying to do a very difficult and at times dangerous job. And sometimes, though, because of that level of danger and the level of cynicism that comes from dealing with the public that does not generally share my view of them, they become a little less concerned about your feelings, and that's merely a mechanism to protect themselves. But that never excuses any type of violations that go to this level. Excessive behavior that is harmful to others is exactly what they're supposed to be working to prevent, not actually perpetrating upon innocent people on the side of the road. If there was any legitimate reason, if there was any real probable cause to institute these searches, then these women should have been taken into custody. They should have been taken to a private facility, most likely the police station, and they should have been searched there. And it should have been done professionally. It should have been done in a fashion that's least invasive, but still most effective. In these cases, it was done by a woman. Okay, nice enough in both cases. But also, both cases, it was still done on the side of a road where drivers were still going by. These women inserted their fingers inside of these victims without changing gloves in between. On what planet, in what nation, under what country, under what type of training inside of the United States of America is any police officer led to believe that that is acceptable behavior in the process of doing their job? In both of the cases in question, the women that conducted the searches were fired. Why? Because they should have known it was not the appropriate thing to do or the appropriate place to do it. The men who called them in have only been suspended. Why? Well, because they just called the women in to do the search. But here's the thing. Yes, the women were fired because they should have known better, but the men should have known better too. So a suspension in this case isn't good enough. They should be fired too. These men should never be allowed to wear a badge or be near law enforcement of any kind ever again, because they lost sight of the most important part of law enforcement, which is to serve and protect the public good. Going to this level of an extreme in violating a person because of the possibility that there may have been some drugs hidden in a unconventional location. Although I know these guys see this stuff all the time. But after having watched the videos, I didn't see anything that would have led me to believe there was reasonable cause to search these women in such a fashion. It looks more like a case of, I may have made a mistake, but I'm not going to back down. And they chose, in fact, to escalate it. But here's the real reason why everyone else not involved in this case should be concerned. For every good police officer there is anywhere, there is at least one other bad police officer. And if it's happening in Texas, then I promise you that it's happening in Tennessee, it's happening in Oklahoma, it's happening in New York, it's happening in Wisconsin, it's happening in California. It's happening everywhere. So be concerned. That's it for today's show, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you all have a great rest of your evening. Don't take my word for it. Definitely don't take their word for it. Take some time, do your own research. Use your brain. and come back and listen to us next time. I am out of here. Have a great night, everybody.